This is War Room Moments, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and most relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. War Room Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board. Here's your host, Jason Miller.
All right. Hey, welcome to the War Room again. Today I have Big Ben on with me today. And glad to have you here, brother. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Cool, brother. Well, hey, I
Colorado with you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, I always say I suck at introducing people, and I'm really good at accepting responsibilities for when I'm terrible at something. So just take 30 seconds, introduce yourself, who you are, and what your superpower is, man.
Okay, so great. Thank you. So first of all, my name is Ben Rogatinsky. I am the CEO of eCFO Solutions, LLC. We're a business process outsourcing company based here in South Florida. Essentially, what we do is we provide outsourced financial services for companies looking to reduce costs, reduce headcount, et cetera. My superpower is hiring really smart people that work for me. I like to think I'm reasonably intelligent, but I've got a team of people that are, especially when it comes to details and organization, way smarter than me. So I'd say that definitely is my superpower, hiring the right people.
That's a good superpower to have because a lot of people suck at it.
That is true. See it all the time. I learned that you can't do everything yourself, and if you hire the wrong people, you end up trying to do their job.
Right.
Hire the best people, let them do what they do, and then you do what you do, which is hire more, get more clients, and hire more people.
That's right, man. Totally down with that. Well, hey, again, welcome to the show. And I love to kick the show off because the idea here is to distill through your story lessons. And so I want to take you all the way back into childhood where tell me about growing up. Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Yes. So entrepreneurs, risk takers. My parents emigrated to this country actually from Israel when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
Both had no education. My father, I don't even think finished high school. My mother did finish high school. But my father, one of the reasons why he wanted to come here to this country was because, like it was back then, it still is now, the land of opportunity, and he saw a lot more opportunity here than back in Israel. He was always a risk taker, an entrepreneur, even when we first came to this country, and he was a handyman, and then he had a pizza store, and then he started fixing up old houses, then he started buying old houses, then he started buying real estate. It was always, let's call it a roller coaster ride growing up, because when you are an entrepreneur, especially starting from scratch, it can definitely be feast or famine. So growing up, I saw, both sides. There were times when there was plenty to go around. There were times when there wasn't so much to go around. But one of the things that I saw, and I saw from my father, I don't think he ever had a real job per se, meaning working for somebody. It's like I said, it can definitely be a ride. And when you're a kid and you're watching it, sometimes it's not the most fun. But it definitely teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot about perseverance, and it teaches you a lot about the ability to make more for yourself when you're on your own, when you're building something, than if you just stay in one place.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of grew up the same way where, times were tough, so on and so forth. And, my dad used to say, times are tough, times are hard. Here's your effing Christmas card, right?
Although I always say it was it was interesting because I was 4 years old when my parents moved here, and I remember we
Hmm.
all lived in one room in a basement in New York. Um, Myself, my brother, my sister was born sometime thereafter. I always asked my mom, I guess she was born 9 months after we moved out of the basement. She goes, she was born 9 months after you guys moved out of the one bed that we shared.
Yeah, right.
But it was when I was 4 years old, we were living in I remember living in a basement in one room, but by the time I was 16, I had a new car, meaning when I was 16, my parents were able to give me a new car. So the arc was not, at the time it seemed like forever, from the age of 4 to 16. But when you think about it, it really
Sure.
wasn't that long of a time period. We're talking 12 years to go from a basement to being able to afford your kid a car. So it really was an adventure. I'll say that. So, and you can only
Yeah.
get that, I think, here in the US. So
Yeah. I mean, that's the American dream, man. It really
absolutely,
is. And
absolutely.
I mean, this country was founded on immigrants, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, Ford was an immigrant. He was an immigrant, came here with almost nothing. Look at the empire he built, you know?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, actually, we're all immigrants to the United States, except for the Native Americans, for crying
Right.
out loud. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I remember growing up too. I grew up on a farm,
Mhm.
and I think the really neat thing to like learn from that is we didn't really know any better either, right?
Right. That's
Not at the time. I mean, we had no idea. We had things, right? We got a toy here and there, so shit, we were happy as hell, right?
right.
So we thought we thought we were doing all right. But then as things progressed, like you're talking about, things got better and better and better and so on and so forth. But I mean, looking back at that, that had to just like really, really distill some strong core values in you that made you want to be a businessman. I would sure think.
Well, I'm a great boss. I'm a horrible employee.
You're one of those non-employable people.
Yeah, I've been fired. I mean, in my early years, I was fired from multiple jobs. I'll just briefly tell you one job, one job I oversold myself, and I remember my very first job, I was making 400 a week, and I worked there for a while, and I was looking to make more money. And I remember interviewing with an accounting firm. At the time, I thought the owners were so old; they were two guys in their 30s, the two partners. And now that I'm
Funny.
56, I wish I was that old in my 30s. But I oversold myself. I said I could do this, I could do that. And the first day I start and they hand me a file to work on, I had no idea what I was doing. I literally pushed paper around my desk for 3 days. By Thursday, I was out. They fired me. And I can tell you, I was so relieved because I couldn't sleep every Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, could not sleep because when you're hired to do something, you have no idea what you're doing, you're stressed out about it. So relieved when I got fired. Another job, I was working for a small accounting firm and I was married at the time, newly married, and I was trying to make extra money on the side. And I took a client on the side, and my boss found, I guess I had a file. This was in the days before everything digital. I had a physical file in my desk, and this guy happened to be a very kind of a paranoid guy. He was looking through my desk apparently, found the file. I remember coming back from lunch and in the lobby, it was a small building, a small lobby, was a box of stuff, and on top of the box was a picture of my wife. I'm like, why is Michelle's picture on this box? And then he comes out and goes, "You're out of here." So that
Oh
experience.
wow.
After that, I decided, you know what, the only way I was going to make it is if I worked on my own. And it's a struggle. I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world. I'm sure to build anything from scratch is
Yeah.
difficult. But being fired several times. There were a couple other times being fired as well. That I realized, you know what, the best course of action for me is to build something on my own. And fortunately, it's worked out, over the years.
Yeah. Well, I also think some point we become self-aware that,
Right.
I mean, I spent 23 years in the military, so
Wow.
You
That's
know,
impressive.
I don't know. In the military, it's like you have a lot of leeway, but then you don't at the same time, right?
Oh,
So it just depends on the situation. But I ran companies while I was in the military too. So it's a little bit of a unique story, but at some point you become like acutely self-aware that you are no longer employable. Right?
right.
And I mean, I had that, kind of. I mean, I retired up at the higher ranks of the military, so it wasn't really that bad, but still, I started getting to the point where I was like, God, why the hell am I listening to you? You're an idiot, right? You know?
That's the
And
problem when you're in the military, when there's always a change.
mm, oh yeah, Jesus. And there's just as many idiots in the military as there is in the corporate
Right.
world, that's for sure. No doubt about that. But yeah, it's interesting how, you know, sometimes how that mindset just pushes us to a different success path, right? And that's I wish everybody could experience it, and I do truly believe that the human race in itself was born entrepreneurial, right?
Absolutely.
Because you think about it, I mean, back in the caveman days, you it was a you basically what you kill, you eat,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, that's like the that's like the one of the number one things entrepreneurship, right? Is I mean, if you can't go out and hunt, well, you're probably not going to eat today. So
That is true. I mean, I can tell you one of the things I really hated. It seems like such a petty thing, but the guy that fired me because I took the side client, who I'm still friendly with to this day. I don't know. I think he did me a great favor. But I remember he wanted me to take lunch from 12 to 1, and I didn't like to take lunch from 12 to 1. I wanted to take lunch like 1:30 or 2. I don't remember why. I mean, maybe it was just being young and stupid and stubborn, but it was like that used to drive me crazy. Like I'm not ready to eat lunch at 12 o'clock. To this day,
yeah,
we're talking, it's more than 30 years down the road. And I still remember him telling me when I should eat lunch and me thinking, what difference does it make if I'm putting the hours in? But it's like there's so many little things that you encounter down the road, and then when you think about them, later on in life, you're like, yeah, why was I so stubborn about that? But
yeah, yeah,
why
yeah,
was he so stubborn about that? But
yeah. No kidding. Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, I mean, there's just tons of lessons that can come from what we just talked about, no doubt about that. But for our hard heads in the audience, I'd really love to, if you'd share some like three mainstay things that have been, North Star things for you throughout your business life. What are three things you'd love to share that might prevent some arrows in the back for a young founder?
so the first thing, and it seems obvious, but so many people don't do this, is have some idea of where you're going to pay your bills in the coming from day one to day. It can be day a year from now, day 2 years from now. How are you going to pay the rent? How are you going to eat? Because it's very exciting when you're starting a business. You've got this great idea. You're going to sell whatever. And everybody's going to love these whatevers, and it's going to be amazing. But until you actually produce it, until you get it to market, until somebody pays you, how are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to pay it? And you'd be surprised how many people don't think about that. And not only from the standpoint of your business, the stamp personal bills. If you're
Mm,
single and you're living at home, great. That's the time to do it. I mean, if you've got an idea, that's the time to do it. You're married, if you've got a kid or two, very difficult. I can tell you from personal experience. Those kids have to eat. And wives like stability. I mean, it's say that jokingly, but everybody
sure.
likes stability. But when you've got a family that you're supporting, your family needs a certain amount of stability, and that means either set aside enough money to cover your personal bills in addition to the business bills, or have some kind of a plan where you're going to borrow it. And if you're going to borrow, know how you're going to pay it back. The second thing is, but plan out that business. Don't just jump into it. Again, I see that in my life. I've seen that
Mhm.
30 years. People have this wonderful idea, but they don't actually think it through. Like I'm going to say, okay, it's like, all right, I'm going to sell these cell phones. Wonderful idea. Everybody wants cell phones, right? How are you going to do it? How are you going to sell it? Well, if I build it, they're going to buy it. Not really, you know?
Yeah. If I build it, they will come, right?
Right. Well, yeah. If you're talking about if you're talking about a bar in a bar in the desert, yes, but and even then you got to
Right.
make sure there are people in the desert, right? But have a plan. And thirdly, and this is somewhat self-serving, make sure you have good advisors, legal advisors, financial
Mhm.
advisors. Again, in a past life, when I had a traditional accounting practice, I would see this all the time, where entrepreneurs would come in and they've got a business that's running, maybe not making a killing just yet, but definitely running, making money. And they're like, well, I haven't filed my taxes in like 3 years, and they've got a pile of letters from the IRS this high. And that just sucks the life out of an entrepreneur when you got to deal with the three letters, whether it's the IRS, the SEC, whatever it is,
Sure.
anything with three letters, you
Yeah.
you generally want to avoid.
It's funny. They're all three letters. That's the
They're always
crazy
three
part.
letters, and if they've got them on their jackets when they're coming to visit you, you definitely want to avoid that. But seriously, I mean, listen, I mean, all kidding aside, the real problem is whether it's state taxing authorities, which by the way, can usually I've dealt obviously with Florida, I've dealt with California, New York. The state authorities
Mhm.
are worse than the federal authorities, but
Yeah.
I mean, people come in, oh well, I haven't paid sales tax in 6 months, and they're garnishing my account, or I haven't filed tax returns in 2 years. Nobody thinks about that when they're starting a business. I've never spoken to an entrepreneur who thinks about, oh, this, that, and the other. What about the tax ramification? What about sales tax? Nobody thinks about it until oftentimes they get a notice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's like ignore the problem until
Right.
it becomes a problem for you.
Got you got to think about those things, that the nitty-gritty garbage that you don't want to. You want to think about that before.
Yeah.
Yes, you need a great product. You need to be able to sell your product, or you need a great service and be able to sell it. But you also need to think about those guys with the three letters.
Yeah. Well, bad news doesn't get better with time.
No, it doesn't.
That's for sure.
Mhm.
Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, how do you want people to connect with you to work with you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So they can go to my website, which is ecfo.ai, or they can hit me up directly at Ben R at ecfo.ai. I'm, like most everybody, I am addicted to this. So I get every email that comes through. The website sends me emails. So those are I respond to things immediately. I hate having unresponded emails. So
Yeah, there you go.
I don't charge to talk. So if anybody who's listening has this great idea, even if they can't afford somebody right now, they just want to talk about what they're doing, get some advice, hit me up. I'm happy to talk. I love to talk to entrepreneurs and hear about business ideas, because today's idea may become tomorrow's who knows what, Facebook, Google, whatever. So,
Yeah, you never know, man. That's for sure.
mhm.
Cool. Well, hey, I love to ask this question as we close the show out, and it's a little thought provoking, and it really is if you could have had anybody here today with us, any point in time in history, dead or alive, doesn't matter, right? Who would have you loved to have here and why them?
Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Okay. I've not heard that one yet.
I'll tell you why. I love reading about and watching documentaries about early, let's call them entrepreneurs. Uh,
Hmm.
these are the guys who built the country. This guy was amazing. This guy, you talk about growing up on a farm. This guy grew up on a farm in the 1700s when there was nothing. He started out with rowboats, then he got into sailboats, and he got into steamboats, and then when he saw the way he saw the changing tides, he sold his shipping lines, got into railroads, and essentially at one point basically controlled the entire railroad system in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's a whole big story, but what's really amazing about a guy like him and other guys in that generation that built up these huge, and you mentioned, Henry Ford at one point. These guys did it all without internet, without email, without telephone,
Right.
handwritten letters, and they built up fortunes that in today's dollars would make them the wealthiest people in the world. So he was the original. Cornelius Vanderbilt was one of the first and one of the originals, and I would love nothing more than to have the opportunity to speak to him, to hear from him firsthand how he did it, the trials that he faced, and how he built up that essentially one of the largest empires in recorded history, in today's dollars.
Yeah.
Plus, one of my sons went to Vanderbilt University, so I have a little bit of
there you go. Little bias there, right?
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, hey, brother. Hey, I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Some real good insights. I always like to say we all have the same 168 hours a week. And thanks for stopping by here for 26 and spending some time with our audience and dropping some good value. That's really what it's all about. And
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we appreciate it. So thanks again, man, and cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to War Room Moments with your host, Jason Miller. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.